It is always awesome when I'm editing this thing. I'm teary-eyed and boo-hooing, and you guys are laughing. It's awesome, though. Isn't it great to be on this day? I know some of you as parents and maybe grandparents have been dreading today because it's tough. It's tough on us because we're having to let go a little more. But sometimes we've forgotten that our job was never to hold on. It was to let go. To send these kids out to change the world. And God can do that through them. And this morning I want to speak to all of us, especially you guys on the front two rows, about keeping the faith. But honestly, this is a message for all of us in the room about keeping the faith and to set the tone of where we're coming from. In fact, if you want to turn in God's Word, we're going to be looking at a few verses in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 5 through 7. We're going to look at that passage as the jumping off point today. 2 Timothy chapter 4. Just to set the context of this passage, I want to play a video clip in just a second that'll kind of explain it. But basically, Paul, who wrote this passage, he wrote this letter, this epistle to Timothy, who was not biologically related to him, but spiritually was a son in the faith. And Paul is at the end of his journey, and Timothy is continuing his journey. And so no matter where you are in life, this message should hit home. And so just to kind of give you the background, to get you to feel the weight a little more of what I'm about to read to you, I want to play a clip. You may have seen this on Facebook or on the internet or whatever on your news feed. But this happened, I think, over the last week or so. But check this out. It's awesome.
6106 radio.
6106, go ahead. Go ahead.
This will be my last transmission on the radio.
Copy. 6106-107. Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all my SPD family for the last 30 years of being by my side, and especially for today for making them a memorable one. I had plenty of good times and a lot of good memories over my career, and I appreciate it. I'll cherish them for the rest of my life. I wish you all well and a safe tour of duty. It's 6106, Officer Andre Leroy Jenkins Jr., ID 1000, 107.
Congratulations, Andre. Hope you enjoyed goodbye, my friend. Trey Love, it's been a pleasure, brother.
Andre, thank you for everything. Congratulations on your retirement.
Congratulations, Andre. Enjoy it. You earned it, buddy. Good job.
Congrats, Dre. It's been an honor.
Congrats, Andre. Good luck.
Congratulations, Trey Love. Have fun.
1108, ID 1000. Slide down for you. Enjoy your retirement. I'll be there one day.
Thank you all. God bless you.
God bless you.
That's it, baby. That's a wrap.
So you see he's signing off for the last time. That's sort of what's going on here in 2 Timothy that we're about to read. Paul is signing off. Now, he's not going to retire in Florida and near Sarasota, and he's not going to play golf. He is about to die for being a Christian. He has lived his life for the Lord. He has done everything he could possibly do for Jesus, and he is at the end of his journey. He is in a time of transition, and so is Timothy in a sense, because he's about to be without Paul. And so let's look at this together. It's on the screen. Hopefully you've got your own copy of God's Word open. But basically, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 5, Paul writes, "As for you, Timothy, always be sober-minded." In other words, Timothy, students, this is good advice for you. Be thinking about what you're doing. Think about where you're heading. Don't just drift. Don't just kind of go with the flow. Think about where you're going, because where you're going matters. It ends up somewhere. And he says this, you need to be sober-minded. You need to endure suffering. As believers in Jesus Christ, if you're here today thinking, man, I just don't want to suffer, you're in the wrong place. Not because this is a bad place, but because when you live for Christ, you're going to have persecution. You are. The darkness does not like the light. And so if you're truly a light for Jesus, you're going to reap it. You're going to get it. And so part of the par for the course for believers is that we're going to suffer, that we're going to have to endure. And Paul tells Timothy, don't look at suffering like it's something weird. It's par for the course. Endure it. Stick with it, which is the theme of this passage. Don't give up. Don't quit. He says, do the work of an evangelist. Fulfill your ministry. In other words, you have been called by God for a specific thing. Do it. Don't give up on it. Don't sell yourself short. Don't go 30% or even 90%. Go 110%. Go all the way. Before I go any more, I just got to say this. These students are about to begin. This commencement is the beginning for you guys on this journey. There's some of us that we've been going along for a long time. And many of us in this room, we have quit. We've given up. We may never have said it, but our lives show it. We've been through a lot. A lot has happened to us. We've endured the suffering, some of which we brought on ourselves, but some of us, we did exactly what God told us to do, and we've endured the suffering because of it. And it is very easy to give up. It is very easy to throw in the towel. It is very easy to have a cynical mindset that that's somebody else's deal, not mine anymore. And we've looked all around, everybody doing their own thing, and we've seen other people quit, and we've quit too. And my encouragement for us today is that something will happen to us where we will want to get back up again. And we'll want to keep going again. And we want to do what Paul just said, fulfill the ministry that God has given us, because He's given every one of you in the sound of my voice a ministry. Every one of us are called to serve, and we've been gifted. And many of us need to figure out what that is, and many of us know what it is, and we're not doing it. And we need to get back to doing it. And so Paul gives Timothy this advice, and then he shifts the focus in verse 6 to himself, and he says, hey, as for me, you still got some stuff to do. As for me, I am ready to be poured out as a drink offering, for the time of my departure has come. I love what Paul says. Paul says, I am ready. He's not saying this shrinking back. He's saying this running full speed ahead. I am ready. I am ready to be poured out. I am ready to be killed. And history teaches us that he was beheaded on the Avignon Way in Rome for his faith. Many of us won't do anything because we're scared about what our coworkers are going to say or think about us. Or we're scared about, what the kids are going to think if we started having Bible study in our home. And Paul was beheaded for the faith, and he did not shrink back. And he said, I am ready. Paul's theme was to live as Christ, to die as gain. If I live, great. I'm going to take people to heaven with me. If I die, great. I'm going to be with Jesus in heaven. It is a win-win scenario. And that was Paul's mentality, and that was his attitude. He says, I'm ready to be poured out. And then he says, verse 7, which is where we're really going to camp out here this morning on these three thoughts. Grads, all right, seniors, you ready? He says this, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. He says it, I'm going to say it again. He says, I'm fighting the good fight. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. This is all past tense because he's at the end of his journey. I was talking to Christy the other day, and I don't know what sparked this conversation. We're just getting a little older, and things are changing, and we were just talking about things and, people that we knew who have passed away, and I told her, I said, I would love to have that verse on my tombstone. But here's the problem with that. I better make dead gum well sure that when all is said and done, that Brandon Massey did fight the good fight, and he did finish the race, and he did keep the faith. Because the reality is lots of people don't. In fact, I've been just brokenhearted over people that I have looked up to in ministry who have not done this. They've gotten toward the end of their journey and they have stopped fighting. They started doing something else. They got distracted. They didn't finish what they started, and they certainly didn't keep the faith, and they had moral failure and they failed. And by the way, I and anyone in this room are capable of doing that. And so this is a goal for me. This is one of my life verses, students, that I'm trying to I haven't gotten there yet. I'm nowhere close to this. But this is what I'm shooting for. So I want to give you guys your last high school homework assignment. Do y'all have any more days of school? Y'all done? Pretty much? Those of you that are going to come back next year, okay, are you done? All right, just making sure. Okay, I'd love to have you back. That'd be great for our youth group. But anyway, parents are like, no, that's not good. All right, so here's my last homework assignment. And let me just tell you how this is going to work. The test is not a written exam. The test is not necessarily even an oral exam. It's going to be basically what you do over the next 4 to 5 years of your life. In fact, even then, it's not over. But we're going to know in the next 4 to 5 years if you guys are doing this. Because it's going to be evident. And so I want to challenge you this morning. And we're sitting here a few months out from you going to the next phase of life, whether it's school or the military or you're going into the workforce. Any way you cut it, you're going through a time of transition, and that's what this passage is about. So let me give you 3 quick things. We're going to camp out here for a few minutes, and then we're going to go eat at the Grab Banquet, all right? Does that sound good? Y'all hungry? Okay, all right. Well, let's get hungry for God's Word. Here we go. First of all, number 1, we need to fight the good fight. Fight the good fight. And I'm using a present tense. We need to fight it now. Not I fought it. No, we need to fight it. If you are alive and you are breathing, we need to continue to fight the good fight. The good fight is the real fight. It is spiritual warfare. We don't like to talk about that. We don't want to seem weird and kooky when we talk about it. But the reality is there is a real battle going on, even in this room right now, for your heart. And you never get away from it. There's never an off day. There is a spiritual battle going on. The devil is going to come after you because you are made in the image of God and he cannot stand the Father. And he has declared war on you, whether you ever acknowledge him or not, and he wants to kill, steal, and destroy you. Students, let me just tell you this. The Satan never takes a time off, and it is a strategic advantage for him to distract you right now during this time of transition. Transition times, you may be out here, you change jobs, things are changing in your family. Satan loves to come at you when you're distracted because you are not looking probably at God very well, and you're not looking at him, and sneak attack. He wants to come at you with everything he's got. And Satan will do everything it takes to take the good fight out of you, students. He'll do it. He wants to take the good fight. He wants to get you to fight some other fight that doesn't matter. He wants to get you to fight on social media. He wants you to get you to run after this or do that or whatever. And Paul is saying here, fight the good fight. Stay with it. The good fight is the spiritual battle you're going to be in for the rest of your life that you've always been in. But right now, during this time of transition, man, the heat's going to get turned up. It's going to happen. Temptations are going to go up. Opportunities to run away are going to go up. It's going to go up. The word fight in the original Greek language is the word where we get the word agonize from. And when I think of the word agonize, I think of something negative and, I'm worried and I'm hurting and I'm worried and consumed by it. In actuality, this is a positive word when it's used here in the sense that I am aware of it and I'm prepared for it. Does that make sense? When I agonize, I am aware of it. It is constantly on my mind. There's not a moment that goes by that I'm not aware that there's a spiritual battle going on and I've got to fight the good fight, but I'm also prepared for it. I'm also prepared for it. So you may be wondering, well, how in the world, Brandon, do you prepare for such a fight? I wish it were as simple as this clip I'm about to play you. All right? Watch this. So, So anyway, I wish putting on spiritual armor was as cool as that. I mean, that looks pretty cool and it's pretty obvious. When Iron Man puts on all his armor and all that kind of stuff. But this is how you prepare for the battle. You put on the armor, God's armor that we're going to look at in Ephesians 6. And I wish I had time to go through Ephesians 6. You can read about it more later. But that's how you stand in the middle of the battle. And God's armor that we're about to talk about isn't as visual necessarily as that, but it is way more important than that. And we are supposed to put it on. And let's just read to it. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, he says this, "Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against the strategies of the devil." Put on all of God's armor. And I wish I had time to go into Ephesians 6. Paul explains in Ephesians chapter 6 all the different pieces of armor. Some of the pieces of armor as a believer you've got because of God's grace in your life. You're not going to lose it. But some of the pieces of armor we've got to take up. It's kind of like baseball. Some of the things you wear, you're going to wear the whole game, right? You're going to wear your cleats the whole game, different things like that. But there are parts of your attire, if you're a baseball player, like, the bat and the glove, that kind of thing. The little helmet to protect your head, hopefully, you put those on as needed. And so there's a both and thing going on here. And Paul says that we have got to put on all of God's armor so that we can be able to stand firm against the strategies of the devil. The word strategy is used there because Satan is strategic. The fact we're not strategic as believers is a shame because our enemy is. And the reason we fall prey to him is because we don't give him food, we don't give him time of day. We don't prepare for his attack. And I'm telling you this now because you're going in through a time where he's going to come at you. He is not going to, I don't care how you feel right now, he's going to come at you. Not once, but a bunch. So be prepared. You put on all God's armor. The goal is to stand firm. And then Paul goes on in verse 12 saying, hey, we fight against powers of this dark world, against evil spirits in heavenly places. Our fight is against the unseen world. If you try to fight a spiritual battle with physical might, you're going to lose and you're going to play right into the hand of the devil every time. So we've got to fight this with armor. And some of you are going, Brandon, okay, what kind of armor are you talking about? You can read Ephesians 6, but I'm going to give you some other pieces of armor, all right? We've been doing our best as a church for the last however many years, 18 years that you've been here. From the time you've been a preschooler, into children's ministry, into middle school ministry, and into high school ministry. And we as a church have been doing this, and hopefully parents have been doing this. We've been doing our best to give you the tools to succeed spiritually. Teaching you how to read the Bible, what a quiet time is, what it means to serve, why is it important to be generous and to give. And all those kind of things, how to do all those things. And so now's the time to start doing them if you're not doing them already, to continue to move forward and continue to grow. When you put on all of God's armor, it's not to be like a turtle where you shrink back and hide. It's to where you'll be like Iron Man. You're ready to go fight. You're prepared. The battle's coming. Well, guess what? So are you. In Jesus' name, right? Can I get an amen? Everybody awake? All right, I'm just making sure. All right, so fight the good fight. The bottom line is fighting the good fight requires putting on good armor. The second thing is this. Not only do we have to fight the good fight, we need to finish the race. We need to finish the race, students. And it's the race that God has set before you. There's two issues with the race. The race is your life, the plan for your life. When you're younger, you tend to run the wrong race. You tend to come to God and say, hey, God, here's my plans. Hey, God, here's what I want to do, and all that. And so basically, we tend to run the wrong race when we're younger. When we're older, we tend to quit the race too soon. You listening? When we're younger, we tend to, God, here are my plans, and all that, and I'm going to run the wrong race. I chase after this, chase after that. When we're older, we tend to give up too soon. Sometimes we get tired, we get beaten up, we get discouraged, and we give up, and we don't finish it. In Hebrews chapter 12, the Bible says this, let us run with endurance the race that who is set before us? Y'all tell me, church. Who sets the race? God. But you know what we do, especially when we're younger? We come to God and say, here's what I want to do. Rarely do we go to God and say, God, what do you want me to do? We come to God with our plans instead of saying, God, what's your plan for me? You made me. You know me better than I know me. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? Who do I need to date? What's my major? Should I go to this event? Should I not? We tend to run to God and say, oh, God, come bless it, instead of, God, what's your plan for me? And so God, it's very clear in Scripture that we're to run the race that God has set before us. And here's the deal. The race that God sets before us doesn't always feel the best and doesn't always seem the best, but it is always, I promise you, in the big picture, the best. Because we believe this lie. We may never say it out loud, but we believe this lie. We think that our best is better than His best. We may never say it out loud, but we live that way. We think, hey, God, my plans are way better than yours, so I'm going to go do my thing, and you just kind of catch up with me when you can. And that's not what we want you guys to do over the next few months and years. We want you to continue to pursue Jesus, continue to run after Him, continue to finish the race that God has set before you with endurance. And how do you do it? You do it by keeping your eyes on Jesus. How many times have I talked to y'all about this passage? 40 times probably over 8 years. You're probably like, dude, will you let up? But this is the key to a lot. How do you run the race? How do you finish it? You do it by keeping your eyes on Jesus, the champion of our faith. So who's Jesus? Jesus ran the same race we're running, and He finished. And if you know Him, He lives inside of you, and you're able to run the race just like He did. And so we do it by keeping our eyes on Jesus. And here's how Jesus finished the race. Jesus didn't focus on the cross. He focused on the other side of the cross. Are you listening? There was joy on the other side of the cross. Just like a mom that's about to give birth doesn't focus on the labor, they focus on the baby coming after the labor. And then the baby grows up and there's more weeping, right? But anyway, you know what I'm saying? You focus on the joy of childbirth, not the actual process, because it's painful and difficult. Jesus was able to run the race that we're running now because He was able to keep His eye focused on the joy awaiting Him. And so He endured the cross. We all have a cross to endure as believers. And so our focus doesn't need to be on this. It needs to be on Him. It needs to be on Jesus. That's how we keep running. That's how we have the hope to keep moving on. We don't just look at the things that are troublesome right now and difficult. We look at the finish line, and it's Jesus. And it says this, He disregarded His shame. He's sitting now at the place of honor beside God's throne. And verse 3 is one. If you're here today and you've given up, this is for you. Verse 3 is, think of all the hostility that Jesus endured from sinful people, and then you won't become weary and give up. When you begin to give up, you need to think about Jesus. Rick Warren is a pastor of Saddleback Church in California. It's one of the largest churches in the United States. They literally are doing things all over the world to impact the kingdom of God. And you look at Rick, and some people love him, some people don't. I have a lot of respect for him personally, and I just am blown away by what they do. But I read something, or an interview that he did a while back, and somebody asked him point blank, have you ever thought about quitting? Have you ever thought about quitting? You're very successful. By the way, he's so successful, he's written so many books that he doesn't take a salary anymore from his church. He paid it all back. Every year that he'd ever been there, he paid it all back. He works for no salary now. It's crazy. And you would think, wow, how much more successful can you be? And somebody said, Rick, have you ever thought about quitting? And he said, I'm not lying to you. Every single Monday morning, I think about quitting. If you think the devil is impressed or scared about that, you are wrong. If you think the devil is scared of the fact that you're an honor grad or that you come from a good home, he loves that. He wants you to quit. He wants you to give up. He wants you to settle for fourth best instead of the best God has to offer. He wants you to believe the lie and call it truth. That's the way he works. And listen, the only way to keep going is to focus on Jesus. The Tour de France is a 2,000-mile race all over France, and it is crazy difficult. You've got the terrain, the up and down to navigate. You've got all kinds of conditions. One day it might be hot. The next day it might be really cold. One day it's blistering sun. The next day it's rainy. Riders that try to do this race, they have to ride their bike at least 22,000 miles a year. Basically, they have to ride their bike almost every single day. You don't stroll up and go, hey, where's the starting line? You don't do that. You don't. This ain't the 5K over here. I mean, you don't. You have to be intentional to run this. You have to be prepared and aware to do the Tour de France, to complete it and everything. And so what kind of a prize makes people endure such hardship and pain? They get $10,000. Nope. Do they get $100,000? Nope. Let me tell you what they get. If you win it, you get that yellow, ugly-looking jersey that he's wearing. Okay? That's like a penalty to me, but that's another story. I mean, you get that. You get to wear that, and everybody knows who won it last year. Look, he's the winner. He's the leader. You get to win it. But not only that, even if you don't win it, when you finish it, you are able to say, I finished one of the most difficult races on the planet. I didn't just start it, I finished it. I completed it. In fact, one of the contestants, a Frenchman that won it a few years back, he says, why do I do this? He says, it's to sweep through the Arc de Triomphe on the last day and to be able to say, I finished the Tour de France. The Christian life is not a race about seeing who comes in first, but it is an endurance to see who finishes it faithfully. The Christian life, students, is not about, hey, I'm first, I'm second, whatever. It's about, hey, I endured the suffering. I endured the hardship. I endured the temptation. I endured the questions. I endured the agony. I endured it all because of Jesus. I kept my eyes on Him. The bottom line is there really is no better race than the one that God has set before you. Don't believe the lie that you've got a better plan. Listen, God has got a way better plan for you than you do. You don't believe me? I know there's a part of you goes, there's no way. His plan's probably really weird and boring. I'm telling you, you haven't lived till you followed Jesus. I'm telling you, you have not lived. Don't substitute your best for His. It'll never be good. That's what an idol is anyway. So, fight the good fight. The good fight is the spiritual battle. Finish the race that God has set before you. Don't just start it, finish it. The last thing is this. We need to keep the faith. We need to keep the faith. Church, listen to me for a minute. I'm just gonna preach now. All right, you ready? Here's the deal. Your salvation status is secure by the grace of Jesus Christ. You can't earn it. We can't do anything for it. He has got you. John chapter 10, verse 27 says, no one can snatch you out of my hand, and the Father and I are one. Your status is secure, okay? So your salvation status is secure, but your salvation fruitfulness is not. Your effectiveness as a believer is not. Salvation is a one-time decision. I gave my life to Christ when I was 8 or when I was 13 or I was at camp and I prayed and I surrendered my life to Jesus. That is an event, that is a beautiful thing, and it is secure by the grace of God. But here's what is not. Salvation, one-time decision. Following Jesus Christ is a daily decision. Putting yourself in a position to hear from God and to do the will of God and to experience God to the fullest of this side of heaven is a daily decision. It is you're not getting saved again. You're already saved. Your status is secure. It's not about your status. It's about your fruitfulness. It is about keeping the faith. And what does that mean? Keeping your salvation? No. You've got that. It's not about that. It's about how is God going to use you to bring salvation to others? How is God going to use you when you're a parent one day to raise your family to follow Jesus? Salvation, fruitfulness is a big, big deal. And many times as Christians, as a church, we love the fact about security of the believer, and we think we can just kick back and wait until we die and go to heaven. That is not biblical. That is not how it works. We are supposed to be intentionally pursuing Jesus the way He intentionally pursued us before we got saved. You listening? We got to run after Him. You have to do it on purpose. When you don't feel like it, when you don't understand, when everybody else is not doing it, you've got to do it. You've got to run after Him. You've got to keep the faith. And that's what Paul told Timothy. Not only fight the good fight and finish the race, but you better keep the faith. You better put yourself in a position to where you hear from God the most. A couple of times a year, I get away and do a personal retreat that I try to seek God about a lot of things. Mostly, God, where do we want to go as a student ministry? Where do you want us to go as a student ministry? What do we need to talk about? What do we need to not do? What do we need to stop? What do we need to start? Many times I come to God personally. God, am I doing what you want me to do? Show me my blind spot here. What am I not doing right? How can I, it's a very personal time. And I'm a doer, okay? I like to do things. And so a lot of times I'll pray a little bit and then I'll get to doing, you know. And this last prayer retreat I had a few weeks ago, it was a little bit of the opposite. I went and I said, God, I'm just going to talk to you until you talk to me. Because I don't always hear from God. I don't hear some voice, hello, Brandon. Sometimes I kind of know where he's leading us, and sometimes I just don't. But God's good no matter what. But I really was needing to hear from God about some things. And I remember I had worked on a few things that morning, and I said I just felt very led to go prayer walking. So I'm up on a mountain on a hill, and it's kind of open, and there's hay fields. You students know what I'm talking about. We've been there before, all the hay and all that. And I'm up there by myself praying, and I'm just walking, and I'm just talking to God about things, and just trying to listen and pray. And it's a very personal moment. In fact, I'm a little hesitant sharing it with you because it's really crazy. As I am coming back to the little cabin I was staying at, I heard this loud pop, like a loud noise. And I thought, whoa, is God here? You know, I mean, it was like, okay, he's here. You know, it was loud. It was crazy. And I thought, what is that? And I'm looking around, I don't see anything. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And I realized right in front of me, kind of right over there, about where Lisa is. Lisa, say hi to everybody, right about there. About that far from me, I see coming across the road, the dirt road, a whirlwind. A really tight whirlwind. And it had picked up a piece of tin somewhere. And it had made a loud noise, and the tin flew down. And that's how it caught my eye, and I started noticing. It started going in front of me. And I'm standing there just kind of like, talking to God. I'm just kind of watching, and I'm watching. And I grew up on the farm. I saw these. I mean, they're just dust devils, and no big deal. It's just wind. But there was something inside of me as I was praying that was like, you need to go catch that. You need to move, buddy. You need to run and catch that. And I'm thinking, dude, I'm like old, man. I'm not going to run after that. And I remember just thinking, as this moving away, and there was just something inside of me. It was like, I don't know what this is. I look like an idiot, and I, like a little first grader, ran after this whirlwind. And I got right in the middle of it. And it was violent, man. It was like, I felt like I was getting lifted up, but that wasn't happening. But anyway, it was just going. And so when it, and everything, and listen, I hope that I am never too old to look like a fool for Jesus. I hope I'm not. So as it moved, I moved. I just stayed in the middle of it as best I could. I'd stand still. Next thing you know, it's past me. Let me go over and catch up with it. And as I'm moving, I'm sitting here thinking, this is basically the way it is with God. I've got to check in with Him on a regular basis because He is on the move. I know some of you think He's dead, and some of you think He doesn't care. Some of you think He's just on vacation. Maybe some of you don't even believe He exists. But I am telling you, God is alive today. And He is on the move, and the problem is we're dead. The problem is we don't have an appetite for the things of God. And so we're not sensitive to the Holy Spirit. And so, God, as this thing was moving, I was moving. And I remember thinking, I just want to be in the center, not of attention, but of His will, because He's really the center. And so if God decides to move here, guess what? I'm moving. If He decides to wait, I'm waiting. But I put myself in an abiding, remaining, connecting position with Jesus. It's the whole thing in John 15 about remaining connected to the vine. And I know that was just some wind. I get it. It wasn't God necessarily. But I can tell you, God uses things like that to really get through this thick skull because I need it. And it was like God was saying, Brandon, abide. Students, keep the faith. Stay connected. You are going to drift if you don't daily pursue Jesus. It happens. Jesus put it this way. He was talking to a crowd one day in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, and He says, if any of you wants to be my follower, this is a disciple. This isn't a salvation decision. This is I believe in you, but I'm going to follow you now. If you want to be a disciple, if you want to be a follower, you've got to turn from yourself. And you've got to take up your cross, and then you can follow me. See, some of us are trying to follow God, and we're not taking up our cross, and we're not denying ourselves. Now, think about it. It plays on itself. How can you take up your cross when your hands are so full? Our hands are so full with things that in the scheme of eternity don't matter. We think the more we grab and gain, the better we are, when in fact, the more we get, the less time and availability we have for God. When God does decide to move, well, I can't. This is getting to be too hard. How can we take up our cross and follow Him when our hands are so full? Some of you were saying, Brandon, my hands are full because I'm caring for an elderly parent. Are they not important? Well, sure they're important. Brandon, my hands are full because I'm sick and I've got this illness. Is that not important? Well, sure it's important to God. Well, what about my kids, Brandon? I am worried about my kids and I'm worried about my job. And my hands are full with those things. Are those not important to God? Well, of course they're important to God. He loves you. And they're so important, you've got to turn them over to Him so that you have the room to take up your cross. That is what keeping the faith is. Keeping the faith is not hanging on, it is letting go. It is making room for the things that are most important, students. Jesus goes on, if you try to hang on to your life, you're going to lose it. Why? Because you have no room to receive. We're so blessed in our country, we have no room to receive. But if you give up your life, you'll save it. I am hoping that some of you guys are going to say, you know what, I'm going to give up my life. I'm going to give it all up. I'm going to trust God with it anyway. Guys, the bottom line is you've got to be intentional to keep the faith. Got to be intentional. When you go off to college this fall or wherever the next phase of life is, in this time of transition, I want to challenge you students to keep reading your Bible, to get involved in a church the first week of school. Don't say, I'll do it in a month or two. No, you go the first week of school. By the way, if you're parents of high schoolers and you go for college visits and you don't go by and visit churches, what are you telling your kids? Can I just put that out there and be a little snippy about it? If you go to a college town and you don't go to, just check some churches out. What are you telling your kids? You're telling, take the next 4 to 5 years off. And when you do, I was talking to a person in this room that said, I did that. I took 4 or 5 years off from God. And it has taken me years to get back to God. When it doesn't have to be that way. Guys, go to church. Get involved. Don't run away. Don't be too busy for the things of God. Your hands are about to get really full. Anybody, amen? Any college students in the house? You're about to get crazy. Yep. All right? There's going to be stuff put in your hands. You've got to give that to God. And yes, it's a priority, but don't let it be the priority. He's the priority. Let me close with this story. When Dwight L. Moody, who is the pastor of a big old church in Chicago once upon a time, when Dwight L. Moody was nearing the end of his life, he was still alive, still in ministry, he was approached by a person who wanted permission to write his biography. And Dwight L. Moody refused. And this is what he said. He said, I'm denying this request, and here's why. Because a man's life should never be written while he is living. What is important is how a man ends, not how he begins. And he wasn't done yet. You see, we are judged by what we finish, not by what we start. We're judged by what we finish, not what we start. And let me just say this. You guys have been one of the most faithful groups of students we have ever had come through our church. You have been faithful to the finish. You really have. I mean, it is awesome to be able to tell middle schoolers, look at how they act. Look at the fact that they didn't get too busy. And my 11th and 12th grade year church became a non-priority. I mean, the fact that I could point to that, I just appreciate that so much as a dad, as a youth pastor. But here's the reality. You're beginning something new. And the temptation is going to be to file this part of your life away as a great thing, but it'll be in the rearview mirror. And I am challenging you to not do that because you're still running the race that God has set before you. There's still more to do. There's still more places to go. There's just something coming around the bend, and God's there, and don't miss it. Don't settle for something less than His best because it's awesome. I want all of you guys, these first 2 rows, I want all of us, but you guys especially, I want you to finish well. In the meantime, Matthew, Ruth, Jeremy, Braden, Ross, Griffin, Noah, Megan, getting choked up, Connor, Luke, Hunter, Emily, Landon, and Noah. I want you to fight the good fight. I want you to run the race that God has set before you. And I want you to keep the faith. And you can do it because you've got Jesus inside of you. Let me pray for you guys.